This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, do Bitcoin futures gaps need to get filled? If you're interested in learning how to make money in both bull and bear markets, or you just want to see what I'm trading or investing in, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So the chart that a lot of people are looking at is this chart of the Chicago Merc futures, the CME futures. And we did get a gap on July 24th, from July 24th, 2020 to July 27th, 2020. You can tell by the change in those dates that this was actually a gap that happened while the market was closed over the weekend. If we go to the futures contract specs, we can see that the trading hours are Sunday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. Central Time. So there is this period on from Friday night through Sunday, the next 2 days later at 6 p.m. when the Bitcoin futures are closed. Now, Bitcoin itself trades 24/7, and we can see that if we look at the same date for that gap on the regular Bitcoin chart, the Bitcoin US dollar chart, this is Bitstamp, we could use Coinbase or anything, there's no gap there. That's just because the market was open over the weekend for the Bitcoin, for Bitcoin itself. And so a lot of people are using this as an excuse or a reason not to buy Bitcoin. The way the argument goes is that Bitcoin did this gap right here, and so that gap needs to be filled. Now, what is a gap? A gap is when there's a space between the high of one day and the low of the next day. It creates this white space in the chart, and the idea is that Bitcoin needs to trade back down and touch the high of this day of July 24th before it will be a safe buy. Now, anything can happen with Bitcoin, obviously, especially over very short time horizons, but I think that this is a bit of a silly argument, and I'm going to show you why in a few charts. So first of all, in order to have there be a gap, we first need to define what chart it's on. As we saw, it is on this chart. What this is the continuous front futures. So this is always the front month of the futures, and these are sort of a bunch of different futures contracts that have been sort of glued together. If we look at, as we said, if we look at just the cash chart, it's not there. If we look at, for example, the current Bitcoin futures chart, this is the October Bitcoin futures. So futures have these various monthly expiration dates. We can see that there's really, well, I guess in this case, there is a gap on the chart, but in terms of previous gaps, they all disappear. There's not a lot of trading volume simply because the contract was not trading with significant volume before. So what you're looking at here is actually a composite chart that glues together, as we said, all of the different months. Now, a lot of people think that stock chart gaps need to fill even for stocks or for anything else, and so they think you should wait until this Bitcoin gap is filled. But I'm going to give you a few examples of stock charts where the gap was never filled. And the problem with waiting for gaps to fill is that when you have a stock or a cryptocurrency that's really strong, that just goes straight up after a certain point, and a gap is obviously a sign of huge buying pressure. This was a giant move from 9,600 up to 11,000 or so, up to 12,000 in just a few days or weeks. And so when there's a lot of buying pressure, it can drive things higher, especially when they're trading at new 52-week highs. And so it's a big problem. If you wait for gaps to be filled, you can miss out on some of the biggest winners of all time. We'll take a look at a chart of Apple here, and the gap in question happened after earnings were reported on October 13th, 2004. We're going way back here. There obviously been a lot of splits of Apple stock since then. This is why the stock looks like it was only trading at 70 or 80 cents. This is an example of a gap that was never filled. And so if you waited to buy Apple until this gap was filled, you missed out on one of the great winners of all time. Likewise, Tesla. Tesla did a famous gap from May 8th to May 9th, 2013. And this gap as well was never filled over time. Likewise, Deere, if we want to look at sort of more old economy companies, It did a gap from November 22nd, 2016 to November 23rd, 2016, and that gap was never filled as well. We can just scroll out on some of these to see what happened. Even in the crash of 2020, we can see that it came close to filling the gap. There's a huge retracement, but it did not actually fill this 2016 gap. Likewise, Square is another really good example. It gapped up from February 22nd, 2017 to February 23rd, 2017, again reporting good earnings. Often when you have a gap like this, a large gap on the chart after earnings, it's a sign that the market has figured out, due to the latest earnings report, that something fundamental has changed at the company and that there's been new material information released to the public in terms of forward guidance or earnings, and the company, people will never look at Square the same after this. So it does make sense that if a stock's going to do really well, that it will go, there's no reason to fill the gap. And if we take a look at this chart here, that little gap is pretty much a blip on the chart. It's way back over here. Something fundamentally changed. The market never looked back, and it's been straight up from there. So I think it's very dangerous. If you wait for gaps to be filled, you'll end up buying stocks or cryptocurrencies that are weaker than their counterparts. If you always want to buy a stock or a cryptocurrency that fills the gap, the reason it fills the gap is because it's selling off. Now, eventually, someday, presumably, Square will fill this gap. Most stocks end up going to zero unless they get bought out or something like that happens. Even General Electric obviously has filled a lot of the gaps from the last 30 years as it has been trending down. But I think in this case, what we see here is basically an artifact of the fact that the Bitcoin futures are closed over the weekend. A lot of people will tell you that Bitcoin's manipulated by Wall Street, that's somehow controlled by the futures. And people make arguments about this. For example, the Bitcoin futures were released roughly at the time in late 2017 when Bitcoin peaked. That's a subject for a whole nother video. But I would say that Bitcoin is a global currency at this point. It trades 24/7. It trades on many different exchanges. And to think that one small exchange on Wall Street would be able to completely manipulate it, I think is a little bit silly. What Wall Street can try to do is they can try to sell a lot of futures, and in a similar way to what they've done with gold, to try to somehow suppress gold prices. But it's very different with Bitcoin, simply because the government owns most of the gold. Most of the world's gold is in the vaults of central banks and governments. It's very different with Bitcoin. The government, the US government in particular, the Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank, does not have a monopoly on Bitcoin. And so they can try to manipulate it. They can try to sell it short, but they're opening themselves up to a huge short squeeze. If this game is going on, if JP Morgan is playing it, for example, as they've done allegedly with gold in the past, they are in for a very rude awakening. And this will just add real tinder to the fire when Bitcoin, especially when Bitcoin starts to hit new highs. So I'd suggest if you're waiting for this gap to be filled, perhaps it will be filled, but we're also entering the most bullish part of the 4-year cycle. So I think it's increasingly unlikely. And I think this gap will end up looking a lot more like the gaps that we saw in Apple and Tesla, where the market really never looked back and went straight up from there. And anyone who was waiting for the gap to be filled was disappointed. Now, if you want to learn some price action formations that actually do work, I'd suggest you check out my price action trading course. You can click on the link in the description notes below. It will take you to this page where you can see all the different courses. You can click on any of these boxes and see the full list of lectures. In addition to the price action trading course, I have a course that a lot of people are really enjoying now, Momentum Stock Secrets, where I go into, this is more for intermediate to advanced traders. I really dig into what makes momentum stocks move and how to profit from their movements. Also a course on day trading. And then my flagship course, Learn to Trade Stocks Like a Pro. This is really for anyone and will take a complete beginner from A to Z and really teach you how stocks work. If you want to learn more about IPO trading, I've got a course on that as well, a course on trading options, And if you really want to understand how futures work, including the Bitcoin futures, I recommend my course, Learn to Trade Futures Like a Pro. So if you enjoy my YouTube videos, you enjoy my teaching style, and you really want to go in depth in some of these subjects that I'm not able to cover in a short YouTube video, I suggest you check out the paid courses. The good news is you get access to all 13 courses for one low monthly price. So if you go click the link in the description notes below, it'll take you to this page. And if you're interested in getting access, you can click the Get It Now button at the bottom. Now, normally access is just $125 for 30 days access to all 13 courses, including my list, my current list of favorite momentum stocks. And but I want to give you a coupon today. If you scroll down here where it says have a coupon code and type in YT99, click update. Normally access is $125, but if you use that coupon YT99, it'll take off $26. You get access to everything for just $99. We'll give you 30 days access. There are no long-term contracts or anything like that. So you can watch all the courses, take notes, and then cancel before your subscription renews, and you won't be charged again. If there's something missing that you'd like to see added, I will also be happy to make you a course and then share it with everyone who's also a Trader University premium subscriber. And in this way, I hope to grow the basket of resources and really make this the best online resource for learning how to trade and invest in cryptocurrencies, stocks, options, futures, bonds, and real estate. So check those out if you really want to go a little bit more in depth. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.